Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. And Cube of Truth. I was able to participate, was honored really, to participate in a Cube of Truth street activism last night. I drove about an hour and a half south of where we live in southeast Georgia. St. Mary's, Georgia is Saint Augustine, Florida. So just south of Jacksonville, Florida. Again, about an hour and a half south of us. And apparently, according to several of the people in our I think it's a chapter, it's one of the best actually in the state of Florida. And so I could see why, because as I drove into St. Augustine, again, this was Saturday evening at right about 4:30 in the afternoon. I mean, the place was packed. I instantly got a little bit more nervous than I already was because of the amount of people. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands, but hundreds and hundreds of people all over the streets. It's a very touristy destination. I believe it's actually the oldest city in the country. Anyway, so that's where it was. I got there about 30 minutes early, had really no problem parking, but the parking fee was $25, which was like a little bit shocked that it was as much as it was. I probably could have found a spot a little less. This one just happened to be very close to where I was going. So I got made my way to the location that was in the Facebook group, and a little background on how I even became invited and aware of this event. First of all, Cube of Truth is put on by an organization, if you're not familiar, Anonymous for the Voiceless. And again, if you're not familiar, you can look them up. Just Google them, go to their website and check them out. But it's an animal rights, animal activist organization, one of the most successful and worldwide. So pretty cool. I'd seen some videos on YouTube, and I don't know, again, maybe Facebook or some other social media. I became aware, and then they had some kind of a invitation to get or receive a mentor, and I thought, well, that sounds cool. So I hit, get a mentor, and I was actually paired up with this gentleman, Andrew. Great guy. We've actually been able to meet virtually, spend about an hour together, getting to know one another, and having him help coach and mentor me on how to get involved. And this is something that I never thought I would want to do, but I've just felt kind of compelled to get more active, and all the stars aligned and everything just kind of like fell into place. And I felt like this was actually kind of a divine opportunity for me to, again, just get involved and do something for the animals. For the animals that honestly I didn't really think I even cared that much about until just recently. But once and if you haven't seen my video about the vegan connection on my channel, I would encourage you to watch that. It kind of explains how I went from, plant-based, into where I'm at now, which is ethical vegan. Of course, I'm also raw vegan for my health, but ethical vegan for the animals, of course. So anyway, I say all that to kind of give you the background. Andrew was the one who encouraged me to get involved right into a Cube of Truth. So it's kind of neat because he didn't push me to get like any kind of formal education or anything. He did encourage me to watch some YouTube videos. One gentleman, Alex Bez, who has left a very successful sales position in corporate America to do activism, and I think his organization is AVO, and I can't remember if it's Amazing Vegan Outreach or Awesome Vegan. Anyway, it's another incredible organization that does a lot of work for the animals. So anyway, he recommended I just jump right in and do a Cube of Truth. If you're not familiar with what a Cube of Truth is, it's pretty cool. So there's basically two teams, and I was able to participate in both teams. At first, I got kind of a brief. The briefing was like basically these gentlemen and ladies were asking me if I was comfortable having conversations with people. And of course I was like, yep, absolutely. I love to talk with people. And I think I'm a pretty competent communicator. I actually listen well, believe it or not. I've become a much, much better listener over the last several years. even though I do love the sound of my own voice and I love to talk as well. So the two teams are the Cube team and then the Outreach team. So the Cube team is in our Cube of Truth. They held up basically TVs, and they're probably 32-inch ish monitors, and they were connected to basically just play. Let's see what the website describes it as. I'm sorry. They play graphic and powerful footage of animal exploitation. So if you've never, forced yourself, as I had to do, to view this stuff, it can be extremely disturbing. And I got to see firsthand how disturbing it is to a lot of people that weren't forcing themselves to watch it. They just happened to walk by and see it. And the reactions of people was, wow. Really, really cool to see that, and to just to bear witness to, little kids and their horrified expressions, and then the parents, how they reacted to the children looking and seeing, and just, you have everything from extreme anger and people. We had some people that were very angry and spoke nasty, hateful, comments. And then we had some really, really great conversations. We actually had some fellow vegans that came by. And I thought for sure, the amount of people that came by, I actually had that thought, like, certainly there's going to be some people that are walking by and seeing what we're doing that are on team vegan. You know what I mean? And it's not like an us versus them type scenario. But again, the Cube team is non-interactive. So we wear a mask, an anonymous mask, which is just like the white little smiley mask. And apparently, I was reviewing the website just a minute ago, we're supposed to remain statuesque, I think was the term that they use, which basically means like don't move. And of course, it's very uncomfortable, even though you have a harness that they allow you to, but it's uncomfortable to just stand. And it was cold. I mean, it was freezing cold, like 50 something degrees. So I joke, I'm from Colorado, but that was pretty cold for Florida. So it was uncomfortable. But I didn't care because I'm doing that for the animals, number one, and then two, to connect with other people that are like-minded, that have, similar level values and willingness to extend the values into our actions. And I wanted to connect with them. And then also, I love to just get out of my comfort zone. And this was an excellent opportunity to get way out of my comfort zone. So I mentioned I was nervous. I was, but I was also really excited. I was very much welcomed by the group, the team that we had. Probably only about a dozen or so ish, but really, really good people. I made it a point to go out of my way to have conversations with most of them, if not all of them, and kind of just get to know their story, what compelled them to get involved, how long they had been vegan. I'm a sucker for a story. I really love to connect with people by listening and just becoming genuinely interested in like their path to where we were at. And anyway, so yeah, the Cube team, they're not, they just stand there. And we had two people back to back, one facing one direction, one facing the other direction, right in the middle of what I became aware was like the hub of downtown Saint Augustine. So you had, just hundreds and hundreds of people, and all kinds of different people, from probably all over. I spoke with one gentleman, Paul, from Holland, and he'd been here for about a week, and we talked for about 20 minutes, and I just was a really good listener. But I was also able to ask him some really good questions that hopefully kind of steered his mind toward not only like what we were doing there, but also the connection between these atrocities to non-human animals and, how supply and demand, how basically our demand for these products feeds the industries and basically, causes the suffering and death of these innocent beings. So the outreach team, that was when I had the conversation. So the Cube team, I know I'm all over the place, and that's just deal with it. Sorry, but the Cube team back to back, they non-interactive, they don't talk, and people try to talk to you. I had several people come up what's that? And go back to that one. And I can't even see what I'm showing. I'm just literally like, the mask, I could barely see out. I mean, just two little holes, and enough to see reactions of people's faces and expressions, which was really kind of neat. And I was unexpected, because on the outreach team, I thought I was observing the reactions pretty well, but when you're behind the mask, you're the forefront of, what do they call it? It was a compelling and eye-catching static art piece, was the way that the website described it. I think that's a pretty good description. So a compelling and eye-catching static art piece. And again, had I read that first, and I probably should have, I probably wouldn't have been moving around as much. But I like itched my head, just because, and I probably only stood there for 20 minutes, maybe 30. And we were there for 2.5 hours. So it was from 5 to 7:30, which you guys know, or maybe you don't, like my bedtime is 8. So like I was out till, I didn't even get home till 9. So I was out really, really late for a Saturday night. And then of course I'm up at 3 a.m. But anyway, the Cube of Truth, again, on the website, is described as a peaceful street activism demonstration that employs direct action with the public. And for those that don't know, whenever you have any type of like open interaction with the public, you are going to draw a wide range of personalities, and there's going to be some type of conflict. And conflict isn't necessarily bad. It's conflict that led me to change a lot in my life. And I think change, as uncomfortable as it is for a lot of us, certainly for me, and as much as I try to avoid it, is great. And it's inevitable. It's definitely constant, and we're trying to force change. You know what I mean? Not necessarily shove our message down their throat, but people that stopped and paused, because there were several, probably dozens and dozens, 3 or 4 dozen people that stopped long enough for one of the outreach team, which I immediately joined first. I was comfortable just right away jumping in. And I was only comfortable, I guess, because I had watched so many YouTube videos of other people engaging with people that were watching this. So I felt really good about just being able to walk up to somebody, smile, and say, hey, do you know what we're showing here? And then and you get all kinds of different reactions, and it's fun because you can basically feel the person out and kind of get a sense of like who they are, what their reaction is, where they're at. And so they just tell you, yeah, I've seen this before, or no, I've never seen this before. I had talked with a group of young people, probably 4 or 5 young men and women, and one gentleman was pretty assertive, and he said, I live on a farm. And I said, oh, that's great. And then I thought, well, maybe it's not great, but I said that anyway. So I said, how many acres, what type of farm, and I was able to engage, build a little bit of rapport, and then basically say, hey, have you ever seen this type of footage before? Are you familiar with the fact that this is going down? And of course he was, and that, anyway, and some conversations just didn't go anywhere, and some of them seem to just kind of go in a big circle. I think a lot of people, and certainly this is the case for me, I didn't realize that I had the power to actually make a difference and change what is happening on those screens. So as horrible as that footage is for us to view, and I think most 99.9% of people feel either bad, sad, or mad when they see what we were showing, which is all different. From marine to chicken, egg, cow, pig, the full gamut of animal agriculture, and really like the worst of the worst. It was brutal. Like, you see kids coming up, 3 and 4 and 5-year-old kids, and you almost don't want them to see it. But then I had to remind myself, like, no, we're exposing the truth. There's a reason why we're there. And it's to expose truth. And it's as uncomfortable as it might be for your 4-year-old. And I saw a lot of parents, don't look at that. And they would, and they're disgusted with what we were doing because their children were subjected to the truth about where our food is coming from, and that's really what I had to keep reminding myself is like, no, this is just showing where we get our food, and if it's really uncomfortable to watch, the whole concept about being out there is that should make us think a little bit more about maybe what we're doing, and also, is it necessary? I was raised to believe that it was necessary to consume animal flesh or meat. I thought it was healthy. I thought it had protein that I needed. I thought, amino acids, and so I was raised with this idea that that was a necessary evil. I think nobody, I don't think, would deny the evil in factory farming. You know what I mean? Well, maybe some would, and actually some tried to. And it's interesting to have conversations with people that kind of go round and round, and you hear a lot of people talk about, all the excuses that come up, right? They just come up in normal conversation. So anyway, it was a very, very good experience. The highlight for me was probably, it's tough between how much I enjoyed connecting with the other team members that were involved, and feeling part of and welcomed, and like I was bringing value to the team. One, by just showing up, but I'd like to think I brought like a spirit of positivity and a decent attitude and outlook upon the whole experience, an open mind, a willingness to serve, and so that was probably tied with, I loved being behind the mask and just observing other people's reactions to this terrible, and I think it was Dominion. So if you're like, what are you describing, and you want to watch a powerful documentary of truth, Dominion. And if you're like most people, and like I was, and you're like, nope, not doing that. And even as I was not consuming dead animals, I thought, no, I don't need to watch that. I'm not eating meat, And I still think that, it's one of those things, like, as uncomfortable as it might be, I feel like everyone should force themselves to watch it, because it's happening, and to just deny that it's happening is, to me, it's unhealthy, and it's dysfunctional in a way. And so, again, I would encourage you, if you haven't seen it, watch Dominion, watch Earthlings, watch them back to back if you can. I mean, I had to pause it a lot. I talk about in my Vegan Connection video I made about my emotional reaction, just being kind of overwhelmed with emotion. And that's another thing I think is a good question for these folks to ask these folks, is because you get people that's like, oh yeah, I don't care. This is, and I believe we've been programmed and conditioned to have that response of like, oh yeah, I don't care. I don't care if they kill a cow. I don't care if they kill a pig or a chicken. And so you can bridge the gap by asking questions about, dogs or cats, which ironically was how I identified the people when I walked up. I think it was, I can't remember his name, but he had a sign that said, eating dog is moral, change my mind. And a big sign. And he was just, and this is how I walked up, and I was like, hey, I'm Dan. And I was able to introduce myself, because I knew, like, that's my guy, that's my team, right? And then I got introduced to a bunch of other ones. But, one woman got really belligerent and angry. She had like 16 rescue dogs, and she was pissed that he was holding that sign. And of course he was like, yeah, I eat dog, and tried to like engage her in a healthy, back and forth, but she was pissed, and it's kind of spiraled down. And when she found out that we were really just there to kind of like expose the truth about the animal agriculture industry, she really got mad and had some things to say. But again, that happens, and the good conversations, I won't say that they necessarily outweighed the bad ones, although I think they probably did, but the quality, and even if it was just one really, really good quality conversation, and actually we documented 33, but even if it was just one, I think it was worth the whole experience and all the time and energy and effort that and uncomfortability that we had to deal with just being out there. So So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but if you haven't watched it, oh, the question. So a question, and I'll wrap it up after this. So people say, oh, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. How does this make you feel? I say, have you ever seen this before? No, no, I've never seen it. Oh, how does it make you feel? Oh, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me, or it makes me hungry. We got a lot of that too, like a mocking, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go eat chicken now, or I'm gonna go get a hot dog, or whatever. And most of those people were just making comments as they walked by, but the apathy of somebody who says, oh, it doesn't bother me at all to watch this, then say, well, how do you think maybe it would have made you feel if you were watching this when you were 3 or 4 years old? Do you think that would have, because I think deep down, obviously we were all 3 and 4 year old at one point, but that level of, because that's where, to me, the conditioning and the programming starts, because no 3 or 4 year old would be okay with watching a chicken, a pig, or a cow get brutally slaughtered. You know what I mean? Even in a humane, ethical way, it's extremely disturbing, for a 3 or 4 year old. But as we grow up, at least in our culture and society, and this is my not so humble opinion, we do get programmed and conditioned intentionally to not feel bothered by what's really going on. And part of it, probably the biggest part, is we're not shown what's really going on. You know what I mean? That footage is taboo, and it's disturbing because most people haven't subjected themselves to seeing this before. So anyway, highly encourage you to watch Dominion, watch Earthlings, get involved, reach out to Anonymous for the Voiceless. There's a cube, there's a chapter in your area. And there's a lot of work to be done, and it's extremely rewarding work, and you're part of something bigger, and it really made me feel like a real vegan, probably for the first time ever, because it's one thing to like change your diet and, buy leather alternatives and blah, 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 but it's totally different to like go out of your way, for me, drive an hour and a half, I had 4 shirts on because it was so cold. So I bundled. I had 2 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of socks, and I still froze my butt off. But, just putting myself out of my comfort zone and going out of my way for the animals, number one, to speak up for those that, just like it says, the voiceless. They don't have the ability to communicate what's happening to them, and it feels good to let people know, even though a lot of people didn't want to hear it, didn't want to see it. And I know I said I'd wrap it up, but one more thing I was going to say that was so cool about the outreach team. So it was such that where we were at, probably about 25 feet wide from building to building. So the cube team in the middle, we were far enough away because we kind of lined the outsides. We were far enough away to where we could like listen in and spy on the people that were like, pausing and observing without them even knowing, because I was just dressed in black. So we kind of blended in a bit. And of course we would creep on people that were pausing and engage them in a friendly conversation to just see where they were at with it, and hopefully kind of take them from where they were at to like one step closer to, not necessarily like turn them into vegans, but to just raise the awareness level. Letting people know, because I think if more people knew, or if everyone had to know the truth, the full truth, and I'm reminded of that line in A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. I don't think a lot of us can handle the truth. I know I didn't want to for the longest time, and it was hard for me even still to like stand there and watch this stuff with people. But I think if everyone was made aware of the full scope of the truth, these industries would not fare out well long term. You would see and you're already seeing a huge rise in veganism, because the level of compassion in our world right now is rising up. We're at a huge shifting and turning point collectively, and we're about to see an explosion of compassion and animal rights activism, I feel like, and I love to be part of it. So I've rambled on long enough at 25 minutes. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my long vegan rant and my first ever, not to be my last. I told them I'm hooked. I'll be back next month. It's a monthly thing, monthly commitment. I love that I can do it once a month because that's just often enough to feel very connected and part of, but not too often to where it would be like, honestly, I would probably do it every other week. It was just that much fun and that rewarding. I love people. I love talking to people, and I love to do something. I feel like my time was very well invested and spent. So anyway, leave me a comment below what you think, if you've ever done any activism at all, if you never have, if you're scared to do it, different types of activism you might have done, any suggestions you have for me on anything. I'd love to hear it. Feedback, criticism, whatever. And again, I'll see you guys at the next video. Thanks.